Here's what's coming up on your horizon. Well, what a difference a year can make. This time last year, parts of Oklahoma were suffering from a 5-year drought. Today, though, thanks to the rains, we don't quite know what to do with all the water. This week, we'll begin by looking at the long-term effects May's deluge is having on two key industries for Oklahoma: agriculture and tourism.
When the lakes are full, our streams are running, we're getting stuck and we're pulling each other out. I'm not going to call calf rope for a long time.
We'll get some summer boating safety tips from Oklahoma's Lake Patrol.
A lot of times the boat operators can get a discount on their boating insurance.
And we end our day with a virtuoso with a mechanic's mind and a little grease under his fingernails. Stay with us for Oklahoma Horizon.
Oklahoma Horizon is made possible by the Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education.
Oklahoma's investment in career tech provides more than nationally recognized technology education and training. It produces solid financial returns for the state's economic future. Oklahoma Career Tech, elevating our economy.
And the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping good people grow good things. And now, from the Career Tech Studios in Stillwater, here's your host, Rob McClendon.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here on Horizon. Well, the good news is that Oklahoma's 5-year drought, for all intents and purposes, is over for the majority of the state. Lakes are full and many are overflowing to the point of catastrophe, which we'll explore a little later in our show. But first I want to bring in Oklahoma's state climatologist to talk about just how significant recent rains have been. Gary McManus, thank you so much for joining us. So in talking about the rains, Gary, we hear the words record-breaking and unprecedented bannered about. So give us your perspective.
Well, when we take a look at the state as a whole, just for the month of May, with over 14 inches of rain, we absolutely shattered the record for the previous wettest month on record, which was October 1941, about 10.75 inches. So when you beat the previous record for the month over the entire state by about 3 inches, well, that's extremely significant.
Is it fair to say then that our drought is over?
The drought, for all intents and purposes, is over. We've had periods of relief before during this 4.5 to 5 year drought. However, this is the first time that we've seen this type of relief across western Oklahoma, where that drought has been especially entrenched over the last 4.5 years.
Now, we all have seen with the heat how quickly things can just dry up. Now, May was a fairly cool month. What are the long-term projections for the coming months in terms of heat and moisture?
Well, of course, the rainy season for Oklahoma runs through mid-June, so even though, we might not get the types of rains we saw last summer, the National Weather Service's Climate Prediction Center is seeing indications of a wetter than normal summer for Oklahoma, at least increased odds for that above normal precipitation. So that would be nice, but we're also seeing the buildup of that El Nino down in the equatorial Pacific waters and the associated changes in the atmosphere. This gives us hope, once we get past summer, that we might see this wet pattern continue, and therefore the drought would not return suddenly like it has in the past over this last half decade.
So Gary, oftentimes when we experience such an event like this past May, it's only human nature to read more into it than the actual facts may suggest. Just like last winter when people were pointing towards the cold weather as proof that climate change wasn't real. Are we being anecdotal if we look at the May rains and say they are evidence of more extreme weather that climate change can cause?
It's hard to say. Now, when we beat an all-time precipitation record across the entire state by almost 3 inches, that is extremely significant. And Texas did the exact same thing. So the Southern Plains, something very significant, very historic happened during May for both states. Now, whether to say that is part of the findings that climate science has seen in the past, that more intense precipitation events are occurring at a greater frequency, it's too early to say right now. That's not how climate science works. That's not how science works in general. We really do need to wait and let those scientists study the weather patterns of what occurred during May and even earlier into April and see what the causes were.
So a final question for you, Gary. You always talk about your pond that you grew up by back in Buffalo, Oklahoma. How's it doing right now?
it's doing great. It looks just like it did right before the drought started back in May 2009. It's not overflowing. Buffalo, that area in northwest Oklahoma, hasn't gotten quite as much rainfall as the rest of the state, but they've gotten enough to alleviate all drought impacts, including those dry farm ponds, the soil moistures. It's really nice and green up there, as we've seen by the latest picture. So things are all hunky-dory again for that pond. All we need now is to stock it with fish, because I have great hopes that this drought is over for good and we're going to go back to a period where it'll keep some water in it this time.
All right. Thank you so much for taking time to visit with us. Gary McManus, Oklahoma's state climatologist. Well, no one has welcomed these rains any more than our state's farmers. Our Austin Moore traveled to far western Oklahoma, where farmers and ranchers have been suffering through years of drought, but not anymore.
I'm over 18 inches since the 1st of April. That's more rain than I have had in the last 3 years combined.
After 5 years of drought, Roger Mills County rancher Monty Tucker says this rain is healing old wounds.
I've seen things that I don't ever want to see again. Standing right behind me here in this background, a year ago was blowing sand drifts, and this is how it's recovered. It's just amazing this land will recover like it does when it gets moisture. Our buffalo grasses we thought were gone. Some of my grandmother's pastures year and a half ago looked like the surface of Mars.
This rain allows Tucker to pull cattle completely out of some fields so they can sit idle and heal.
It's a well-deserved rest for these pastures. We've asked a lot of them the last 4 years, so we're going to pull off. We're going to rotate again. We're back into a normal pattern of rotation, bringing stockers in to utilize extra forage, and it's really nice to have options instead of being forced into a decision like we were 11, 12, 13.
Of course, rain does bring a handful of complications, though you'd be hard-pressed here to find anyone ready to complain about the moisture. Tucker is on the lookout for foot rot in his herd. Wheat harvest is being delayed, and wheat hay is progressing too far as farmers wait for things to dry out. Custom baler Mark Browning explains.
Everybody is waiting till after rain before they start swathing. And then now the rains have hit and they're not letting go, and everything's turned to grain. So there's not going to be any really nice wheat hay in this part of the country.
And for Brandon Hickey, owner of the Elk City Livestock Auction, the rain reminds him of lessons learned from an older generation.
You know, I had an old timer tell me when we was just really getting into the heart of this drought, we knew we were sure enough in trouble. We was sure enough in a doozy of a drought. And this guy, he'd went through the 1930s drought and the 1950s drought. And he told me that you'll know when the drought's over because you'll get more rain than you want. You'll be sick of the rain before it stops. Now, out at my ranch, I'm a long ways from that yet, but here at this sale barn, I may be getting real close.
Fridays are sale days, a time when employees work to keep cattle flowing through the ring as quickly as possible. Usually.
You know, Thursdays and Fridays is somewhat frustrating around here right now because they're getting their exercise. You know, they're trudging through some pretty deep mud at times, but you know, I've got a really good crew. They know how to handle cattle, handle them as quick as we can without being dangerous to the cattle. It's not too hard to handle them slow in these pens right now because you can't go very fast in them.
Yet these inconveniences are something no one here is in any hurry to complain about.
I mean, everybody's still cautious. You know, we're not totally convinced that we're out of the woods, but it just, you know, you step lighter, your heart is lighter. You know, everybody smiles a little bit more.
They'll take the rain. They don't care if they lose a crop. They're ready for the rain.
When the lakes are full, our streams are running, we're getting stuck and we're pulling each other out. I'm not going to call calf rope for a long time. 2011 will stick in my memory for a long time.
Well, Austin, we've both covered agriculture for longer than I'm going to admit to. In general, is the mood out there significantly different now than it was just a couple of years ago?
Oh, massively. In fact, at the Elk City Livestock Auction, where I've shot a number of times, I've never seen it this fun. People were joking back and forth with the auctioneer and calling them out on stuff. It was a lot of fun to be out there. Everyone's in a great mood.
Yeah, funny what a little bit of rain will do. So I do want to ask you about what one of your interviews said. And he's talking about how the wheat crop probably not going to be able to cut it and use it for hay, and it was going to go to grain, and that was going to be a problem for him. In general, how is Oklahoma's wheat crop doing?
Well, in general, it's not a real pretty picture right now. We needed the rain, and in fact, we have parts of our state, especially in the Northwest, that wouldn't have a crop if we hadn't had some cool temperatures, some cloudy days, and a lot of rain. We got that, and so we're better off there. But as a whole, we've had it too much. At this point, we're looking at delaying harvest and getting some sprout in at some point. So you're looking at a reduction. Estimates are around 20% loss in yields.
So Austin, you've given us a really good snapshot of some of the challenges that they're facing right now. But let's talk big picture. What does this latest rain, what does it mean for Oklahoma's agriculture industry, not just going forward in the next coming weeks, but in the coming years?
Well, it's a great rain. It gives people hope. It gives them opportunity. It lets them plan a little bit for the future. But we can't forget that we had some real big cost with this drought. Probably the biggest thing is the loss of generational knowledge. We had a lot of folks in their 60s, 70s, into their 80s that would have still been doing this for a while. Now they've dropped out. They had to sell out of cattle. They weren't able to, take on the loans with the expectation they could get more. And so now we have those folks who have all that knowledge you'd like to pull on. They're simply gone.
Well, certainly an important story that's important to a lot of communities around the state. Thank you so much, Austin.
You're welcome, Rob.
Now, if you're feeling a little waterlogged, we do have a bit of a change of pace later in our show when we meet a mechanical virtuoso.
You're watching Oklahoma Horizon, featuring some of the good things that are happening in the great state of Oklahoma.
Well, believe it or not, Oklahoma has about 55,000 miles of shoreline, which is pretty impressive considering we're smack dab in the middle of America. In fact, the state has about 2,000 more miles of shoreline than the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic coast combined, thanks to the concerted efforts of building lakes. Oklahoma has the largest number of man-made lakes created by dams of any state in the entire country, and our prolonged drought has been hard on each and every one of them. None more so than in southwest Oklahoma. After years of drought, recent rains have replenished water levels of the long-depleted Altus-Lugert Lake. As of last week, the lake at Quartz Mountain State Park is now more than full. In fact, just in the last month, it has tripled in size, which is good news for not only boaters, but the farmers and ranchers of that area who depend upon it for irrigation. Now, lake levels are also up around the state, some of them dangerously high, causing damage that could take a while to repair. And while certainly inconvenient for lake lovers, in the long run, it's ideal for our environment and our economy. We traveled to 2 Oklahoma lakes that have pretty much gone unscathed by recent flooding, and we start in south central Oklahoma. Situated just outside of Ardmore, Oklahoma, Lake Murray is a favorite for locals. But this Memorial Day weekend, not a boat in sight.
We're open, and we have 9 campgrounds that are ready to go.
Richard Keithley is the assistant manager of Lake Murray State Park and says the same rains that closed most of Lake Texoma and forced Beavers Bend State Park to be evacuated did wreck this park's summer kickoff, yet it's still just what Lake Murray needed.
The water levels were near record lows, and most of the boat ramps accessing this lake were closed down. As a matter of fact, last year we were only able to keep 2 boat ramps open.
Which won't be a problem for the foreseeable future. Lake levels that were more than 6.5 feet below normal just last October are now, thanks to May's rains, back to normal.
From October through April of this year, it brought it up about a foot. The changes in moisture level brought it up about a foot. In May, we have come up 5 feet 2 inches just for the month of May.
helping Lake Murray bounce back to full capacity thanks to 2 foot of rain in a single month and the runoff those showers have left behind in this lake's drainage basin.
If we look to, say, 4th of July, or even the other weeks in June, you'll see a lake that's able to sustain good levels for quite a long time, even a year or two. We'll see good availability to the recreation activities on this lake for quite some time.
And no lake in Oklahoma attracts more recreational users than Grand Lake northeast of Tulsa.
Well, it's certainly picked up here in recent weeks, the amount of rain we've had.
Justin Alberti is with the Grand River Dam Authority and says while most of Oklahoma has been deluged by rain, Grand Lake's watershed has been much drier.
For this lake to really see the water come up, it's got to rain a lot in southeast Kansas and southwest Missouri. That's where it really affects our watershed. We obviously, if it rains hard enough here, we have some runoff here locally.
Stretching 66 miles long with more than 1,300 miles of shoreline, Grand Lake's sheer size helps it better deal with flooding. Yet they still have had to open their floodgates, which can cause some problems downstream.
When you open floodgates and you release a foot of water from Grand Lake, it runs into Lake Hudson, which is also another GRDA reservoir. A foot of water out of Grand puts about 3 feet into Hudson because Hudson's a much smaller reservoir.
So for Alberti and others, out of sight is never out of mind because the water, well, it has to go somewhere. And that's when flood prevention begins with Oklahoma's Corps of Engineers.
We can't just run this all downstream and because they're trying to release what's below them. It's all done staggered, balanced, it's all done in a way that allows the Corps to get as much water downstream as safely and quickly as possible. We always tend to think once it's downstream from me, it's kind of maybe not I don't have my concern anymore, but the Corps, it's all their concern until we get it out into the Gulf, I guess, or in the Mississippi River.
Which could make this an interesting summer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Now, if you'd like to see my interview with the former Tulsa District Commander of the Army Corps of Engineers and current Secretary of Energy and the Environment, Colonel Michael Teague, we do have that streaming under this week's Value Added section.
Still to come on Oklahoma Horizon, a mechanical musician. But first, boating safety.
Well, with all the new water in the state, the topography in many of our lakes has changed. Earlier, I visited with Oklahoma Highway Patrol Trooper Amy Cobalt, who is a spokesperson for their Marine Division. So, Amy, what is the one thing you'd like people to think about as we begin another lake and boating season?
I would like people to just be aware of their surroundings, be aware of some of the laws that we have in place to protect them. We know that people go to the lake to have a good time, and that's not our intention, is to ruin their good time. It's actually to keep them safe and avoid any tragedies from occurring.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions you find or you hear from people when you may have interactions with them about boating?
One is that they didn't know there was any laws out on the lake. They're out there to have a good time. They didn't realize that there was enforcement action that we could take. Another one is the personal watercraft, the jet skis, wave runners, sea-doos. They didn't realize that they had to follow any of the boating laws. Another one is, some of the alcohol laws are kind of confusing as far as drinking and boating. So we try to use education either in the classroom or out on the lake to just educate people on what's going on out there.
Okay, so in a motor vehicle, you can't have an open container. Can you have an open container?
You can have an open container in the boat.
What about drinking?
The operator and the passengers can be drinking. No one can be intoxicated. We have public intoxication laws and also an operating under the influence law.
When you have to work an accident on the lake, is there any one factor that you can often contribute to that accident?
Usually it's the operator not paying attention. Collisions occur really quickly out on the lake and on the road. Most of the time the operator just wasn't paying attention, and either they were distracted by the other passengers in the boat, or they just didn't realize that they were doing something wrong.
What are the laws concerning children and watercraft?
Children and watercraft. Children under 12 cannot operate a vessel at all. children between 12 and up to 16 can operate a boat or a personal watercraft if they've had an education class. And then as far as life jackets go, anybody 12 and younger needs to be wearing a life jacket whenever the vessel is underway.
Now, each year the Highway Patrol teaches classes trying to educate Oklahomans about that. There have been several classes you've taught this spring?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we teach a 6-hour boating safety class. It's free to the public, and it covers a variety of topics such as just basic boating terminology. It covers boating laws in the state of Oklahoma. It covers what to do in case of an emergency, equipment requirements, just a variety of topics. A lot of times the boat operators can get a discount on their boating insurance, and then also that fulfills the requirement for the 12 to 15-year-olds to be able to operate a boat or a personal watercraft.
All right, well, we will certainly put a link up on our website to those classes. Trooper Cobalt, thank you so much.
You bet.
Want to share something you've seen here today? Well, all of our episodes are streaming on our YouTube channel at Oklahoma Horizon TV, or you can subscribe to our weekly free podcasts on iTunes. Well, when you think about auto body work, a string ensemble usually doesn't come to mind. Yet we caught up with a Stillwater High School graduate who is as skilled with a wrench as he is with a violin bow. Joining me now is our Andy Barth.
Well, Rob, it's pretty common to walk into an auto body shop and hear rock music blaring in the background. It can help pass the time and lift some spirits. Yet we met with one student in Meridian Tech's collision repair program, and he works to a different tune.
From the sweet sound of violin music to the rhythm of an auto body shop, Nick Gedra can do it all.
We've done a lot of work on the cab and stuff like that, and we actually had the original cab of the truck, which needed a lot of work. It's coming together pretty well.
Yet his true love, music.
I'm in the orchestra program. I've been in there since 6th grade. I've played violin since I was about 6.
A passion passed down from his father.
My dad kind of got me into it. He plays guitar and stuff like that, and he wanted to learn violin with me, so that's basically what got me into it.
And his skill with a bow translates to the shop. Steve Young is the collision repair instructor at Meridian Tech.
He's an excellent student. He's a very, very smart young man. I wouldn't normally say that in front of him, but he really is. He's a good student.
And Young says being a musician makes Gedra a better mechanic.
It's actually an asset because he's very detail-oriented in what he does, and that follows through over to what he does here.
And for Gedra, auto body work will help his future.
The skills I learn in here, I can help myself through college and anytime I need, extra work, I guess.
Whether he's working in the shop or performing on stage in a tux, Gedra has a career and a passion for a melody.
And now Gedra plans to attend OSU to earn his degree in business, and then plans to open his own music shop where he will sell customized instruments he's built.
And I understand that violin isn't Gedra's only talent.
It's not, Rob. He did sit first chair in his high school orchestra with the violin, but he also can play guitar, banjo, and the upright bass.
All right, cool story. Thank you so much, Andy.
You're welcome, Rob.
Now, if you'd like to see more about how skills education and a love for music can go hand in hand, we do have the inspiring story of an accomplished musician whose life took on a second verse. Just go to okhorizon.com and look for it under our Value Added section. You can keep up with us throughout the week. Just head to okhorizon.com, where you can see more of any of our stories, read our reporters behind the scenes blogs, see what others are saying about us on Twitter, and face the facts with our regular updates. So reach out and touch us anywhere and anytime. Next time on Oklahoma Horizon, we head out on Adventure Road to look at the impact Native America has on Oklahoma tourism.
Depending on what type of adventure you're looking for, you can really plan a weekend, a day trip, or if you have a whole week, you can spend your whole week along Adventure Road.
Oklahoma's Adventure Road, with Oklahoma Chauffeur the Heartland, Oklahoma Horizon. Thanks for including us as part of your day. We leave you today with the music of Nick Gedra and the Stillwater Orchestra. Hope to see you back here next week.